Oh, hi there. Today I wanted to talk about something that, I'd kind of been thinking for a while, and, I decided I want to make a video about it. Paul Joseph Watson, he's a very interesting character. I'm not going to say I've liked all of the videos he's made. Some of them have been, um, a little strange. But overall, I actually like the content he puts out, and I really think he puts on his best effort. And that's something I, don't see out of a lot of YouTubers. He's got a lot of harsh critics. I believe he was having some concerns about his channel being shut down about a year ago, that being taken away from him. And he actually is a good source of news. He's against the migrant influx into Europe, and I totally understand him being a Brit and all that he would not like that. And, it's to a lesser extent over here, and one of the more he's made several videos about it, but one of the more ones of recent memory of mine was one titled called "The Islamic State of Sweden," and there was just one point that I wanted to say that I'm not sure he understands, and it's not that I don't think he could have been persuaded into understanding this part of it, and I definitely think his heart is in the right place. It's just he's focused on other issues, and he may have not understood this. I mean, there are plenty of issues that I know quite well, and there are important facts about him that I do not know. I I do not know myself. Anyway, um, Paul Joseph Watson, he talks about how these migrants are returning fighters from ISIS, or getting big cash settlements, multiple housings for some of their leaders. A little bit lower down the line, migrants are coming in and they're getting an allowance and rental accommodation, in various parts of Europe and also here in Canada. And over in Europe, in this video, he was particularly talking about Sweden, but there are other places too, like Germany, the UK, and whatever. And the thing he doesn't, I'm convinced he doesn't understand. I don't think he's neglecting to mention it. I just don't think he understands. Is that, and it's the thing a lot of people don't understand actually on this situation. All they hear is the government's handing out money to people, people like money, and people go, well, that should go to social programs or to me or whatever. And they don't understand. The government don't give nothing away, okay? And money can buy you things, but is it worth your soul? Is it really worth it? Because these people coming into Europe, they are under scrutiny, even though the government likes to pretend that no, they're not. They're just regular citizens. Nope, pay no attention to them. And then, some of them go out and commit um, terrorist acts. That's what's happened in the UK. I think one of the more recent ones was the guy who was in a car who ran over some people on the sidewalk on a bridge. There have been multiple other ones. I mean, there were small time ones as well where it's just like, well, that's not going to make the front page, but it is theoretically the very definition of terrorism. Um, anyway, so what I'm getting at is these people that are coming in immigrants and they have housing for them, they have an allowance. This is Europe going, we're a bunch of bitches. Do what you like. The thing is, the migrants are stupid. So, okay, you get the migrant father. He's most certainly biased, hates America. He grew up with that mindset. Okay, so his actions are relatively predictable. Same thing with a woman, although the woman is usually abused by the male migrant, and they bring their kids with them too. They bring their kids with them. And you may go, well, what has this little 12-year-old ever done to anybody for him to be negatively looked upon? And the answer is absolutely nothing. But these housing accommodations, they're bugged. There's cameras in them. And you know what? They're studying these people. They want to know how the migrant parents are teaching um, the youngsters how to become the insurgents and all that. And they may, give them access to the internet where it's catered to them. It speaks a language that the language from whatever country they come from so that they can understand it. Really, they're just being studied. And this is actually important because um, you can only learn so much from satellite photos, whether there's ground troops in whatever particular countries and things like that, because obviously these people keep their mouths shut when they think that they are uh, getting their way, or that they're, obviously in trouble because there's a soldier at their door. Um, the thing is, with the media portraying, the migrants, essentially the Ottomans, finally conquering Europe like they've wanted to do for centuries. And the media goes, oh, we're a bunch of dogs with our tails in between our legs. Oh no, the powerful migrants. And it's just like, because the migrants are stupid as fuck, they're the elders, the parents of these migrants got this mindset that they're smarter, that they're winning the war that's been going on for hundreds of years between Islam, Middle East, um, Ottoman Empire before it collapsed, against Europe. They think that, and it gives them a bit of an ego. So they show up, and they're getting handed money, and everything's great, and they spill their beans right in their accommodations. They tell us everything about what they do to indoctrinate the young people so that they grow up to be exactly like the adults who are the ones who are committing the terrorist acts. Some of them, anyway. I'm not going to say all of them, but some of them do, for sure. There's no denying that by anybody, unless you're just outright lying and an idiot. Um, so the thing is, the government is learning about them, and this takes a few years. So, like I said, 12-year-old shows up in the country, probably barely knows how to speak his own language, let alone English or any other language, because the parent figures aren't actually very good at controlling their children. So basically, they hand them a Koran with a bunch of gibberish in it, and somehow the parent figures think they're more intelligent when they do that for some reason. uh, yeah. So anyway, they know everything that's in the book that that child is reading, and they indoctrinate them and things like that. And this gets international attention. It becomes almost like some sort of a gambling ring, because you got the Asians, you got the Russians, you got the Europeans, you got the Americans, you got the Canadians, uh, any other significant internet savvy countries, and they're all observing the behavior of these primitive human beings and what they do in a society as to perpetuate what they see the world should be. And the government in the UK, the government in Sweden, the government in the Germany, they've been nasty characters throughout history. Every government was. That's just the way how it was. And same with the Canadian one too. And to say, oh, they've turned over a new leaf, that's a facade. That's to trick the feeble-minded and the dumb. And Paul Joseph Watson is not dumb. He isn't. I had heard he's not making any money off of his InfoWars channel anymore, and that's sad because he deserves to make a lot of money for what he's doing. It's not an easy job. He's had to take a lot of harsh criticism. Um, but this particular point, I think he just missed. And it could just be because, unlike me, he has a circle of people who help him out. I mean, he's a subsidiary of Alex Jones, so he's got some connections. And they just might have kept him distracted so he didn't see this particular point or aspect of the conversation. And in no way is this me defending what the government does over there or over here. I'm just saying they don't ever give anything away for free. And when they say they are, that means they're up to something. And these idiot migrants would never think of something like that. They hardly even know what a camera is. They don't know anything about pinhole cameras, like tiny little cameras in the wall and things like that. And, uh, not only that, if they're being fed propaganda about how um, they're winning and they see a little bit of money in their pockets and things like that, and they're able to buy food and foodstuffs and things like that with relative ease, which they couldn't do back in their own country, it's like, let's party. It's great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But we're still mad at them, so we're going to cook up a plan to get them. Except the government in Europe can see what they're doing. Now, this trick would not work on a lot of people. It wouldn't work on the Russians. Wouldn't work on the Chinese. Wouldn't work on the Americans. Probably not the Brazilian government, but the Brazilian populace probably would. Um, so, over here you hear migrants are, I forget the figure, I think it was like $1,500 a month plus housing. And you go, well, isn't that kind of bullshit? A lot of people around here don't get that kind of money and we're citizens. Well, yeah, but you don't know what their housing looks like. You don't know what cameras are in there. You don't know what they're being talked to. And also, Paul Joseph Watson was talking about how they were, getting therapy and, obviously monetary funds, housing, and all that sort of stuff. Therapy, from anyone who understands what that means, is usually a bad thing. Very bad. So these Islamist terrorists who did bad things overseas, whether it was for the Western cause or not, because that's the other factor, is some of them are bought off to cause trouble in their own country, and then they come over here. And then that video Paul Joseph Watson made about the Islamic State of Sweden, you or nobody knows, probably not even Paul Joseph Watson, what that guy had to do to get that kind of money. And the thing is, we have to remember that the Americans are stealing as much oil from that region as possible. We need it because the Russians have a lot of oil. There are a lot of other countries, especially in South America, that have a lot of oil. We need oil. And it's a war that we've been dealing with for hundreds of years. And, how the secret is kept the way it is by people being programmed, especially the new generations, by using words like bigot, Islamophobe, and things like that. They think if they use a certain set of words that justifies their argument and they feel content with themselves. No, you dumb motherfucker. If that's the way you think, then you're not capable of having a real discussion. You're a retard. You know a few words like a fucking parrot, and you think, all I have to do is utter this word and I've won the argument. No, 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 no. You have to actually know what the fuck you're talking about. And learning a few words that you hear every day on the computer or on the fucking TV, and then using them in any discussion, does not mean you won the argument. It means you're a hissy, pissy little crybaby. if you want my opinion. And and these are the figures. Let's remember, these are the figures that we're hearing. It does boil people's blood, and it's supposed to. That's the other part of this rhetoric and propaganda, is that you hear, oh, these people are getting $1,500 a month and free accommodation. You don't know it's not in the middle of the fucking prairies or something. And they get their food delivered or some shit like that because it's for their own protection. They're under PC because there's a far right in places in Europe and Canada, so they have to be out of the way. Kind of like in an internment camp, really, like the one for the Japanese. Don't ask me to feel sorry for them, but I'm just saying. And you don't know what they put in that food. You don't know what they put in those drinks that they're eating. Not eating, they're drinking, I should say. I shouldn't stumble my words like that. But you go, everything those people do is monitored. And the figures that the rest of Canada hears and the rest of Europe has may not be accurate. As a matter of fact, there will be a bean counter to make sure that they get just the amount that they need to feel content and feel this sense of supremacy, but not quite enough. But also, they have to tell the rest of the populace, the citizens of whatever country, that they're getting so much money, because there's a psychological element to that as well. So it's a very complex issue. And as I said, I do not support what they do because it's like they prop up these people to be a problem for society. Because essentially they can see a problem and they're letting it progress instead of, putting their foot down and stopping it because they want to learn from it. I can kind of understand that mentality, but the problem is that region of the world is always going to have that sort of problem. And I mean, yes, there is some useful information to be had if you're to study live specimens under close proximity within your own country. But as far as enabling them, and in some cases, even encourage them to do bad behavior, is very manipulative. It's coercive. It's manufacturing consent. It's all of those problems and more. And this is all being broadcast on the world stage. They're showing the primitive nature of these migrants, kind of like if they were observing, baboons back in Africa or something like that, except they don't need permission to observe baboons. Um, because, as I said, satellite footage and whatever soldiers see and whatever stories they hear from them is not quite the same as the day-to-day life of a migrant and how they indoctrinate their youth or how they think or what they're going to do in a situation like they're in. So these are all things that can be learned. And you're not going to hear any news media outlet say that. And, it is possible that Paul Joseph Watson knows this and doesn't say it himself. He may have a little bit of a porcelain mask himself. However, from what I've seen, I'm more inclined to think he just doesn't know. Could be wrong, but I think he doesn't know that aspect. And I mean, he does have concerns. People were talking about shutting down his channel and all that sort of stuff. And he stopped making money from it, as I said. So the important thing is don't believe everything you hear and question things. Like you go, from your personal dealings with the government, have they ever given anything of any significance to you? Have they ever done that? And the question is, no. Most people will say no. No, they haven't. They avoid at every cost to give you even a bus ticket, let alone hand out some, super rich migrant Muslim, million-dollar housing, and allow him to bring all his relatives in, and they're all being paid with taxpayer money and things like that. And you go, what are they really getting out of that? And a dumbass migrant's gonna go, yippee, we're winning. I'll just take this, and you don't realize you're dealing with the devil over there. And people go, well, now the minority is the people in London who were Caucasian, which is true. They're at 45%, but the thing is, that doesn't mean that the other 55% are the same body. For one thing, they're not. They're of many different ethnic origins in different countries and things like that. And it would not take too much to get them to turn on each other. Right now, it's easy to rally them against the white man, but you switch propaganda around and go, well, the blacks don't like the Arabs for this reason. These particular Arabs in this region don't like these Arabs for that region, and you promote the propaganda that suggests that as a government agency, and guess what? They'll tear themselves to pieces. And this is completely undermining the British Army as well to take care of the problem. But I mean, on a psychological basis, these guys don't stand a chance. They're gonna learn everything they can from these people. And I'm not saying I like the idea because, every now and then one of them, tweaks out and goes and does something and it ends up on the television. And it's like, that could have been avoided, but it didn't. And there are people who have no business knowing what's going on there. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about like governments in China and things like that who have a stake in it, who this sort of stuff doesn't bother them at all. In fact, they're eating popcorn and enjoying it just because they're sadistic bastards. And they do that to their own people too. And the thing is, through human psychology, they're learning a little bit quicker because they're more desperate, they're more callous, they're more vicious, and they'll do it to anybody. And the thing is, over here, we don't really need to do it. We already can build a great society because of what resources we have. Not necessarily because the assholes are in charge, but what resources we have, we can build a great society. Over there in China, not only do they not have the resources, they got even bigger assholes who are in charge. And building a perfect society over there is just not going to happen. So they don't have a problem doing human behavioral studies on people over there. They do it all the time. And, it's just they do these things so that everything can be mathematically, scientifically calculated so that they know what a person from a specific timeline, ethnicity, everything about them, what they know about the world and what they could possibly think of and how their mind works. And that's the whole point of bringing these migrants. And they probably embellish the figures of how many people are actually coming over, and how much money they're getting. As I said, governments don't hand out money like candy. They don't do it to anybody. And if they do, that's when you gotta be suspicious, because that means they're up to something. It's shake hands with the devil. That's what it is. And I think it's just something that Paul Joseph Watson has not seen. I think he's too busy with other aspects to have seen this particular element of the discussion. So no, I'm not in support of migrants who hate us coming to our country and receiving money to live here. Not that you hear too much about what kind of money they get. I mean, every now and then on the television, you'll see Trudeau going, "We must help the migrants, blah, 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 blah." But what he says and what he does are two different things. And if all they do is show you, like a mediocre looking apartment and there's no context, like they don't say where it is, of course, because of the far right and how dangerous they can be. Um, You don't know they're now in the middle of nosebleed country where, like, anybody around here who owns a house could go live out there and buy 10 houses. There are places like that in Canada, where a house is just not worth anything because there's nothing around there. There's no grocery stores, there's no downtown. You can forget about there being a Sunrise Records. Pfft, not a chance. In some of those little towns up north. Um, yeah, so those are all things to be considered, yo. And you have no idea that, and as a matter of fact, you probably are being lied to on exactly what kind of money they're getting. Because the government is the stingiest of the stingiest fuckers. And, they will say things like, they're getting this money, much money, and people's blood will boil and go, "Urgh." But they'll go, well, we're not actually giving them that money. We're telling you this because this is the reaction we want from you. Remember, they're bean counters. They don't want to hand out money because that's less money for them. And these migrants come from third world countries, and they think if there's a grocery store and it's got mangoes, kiwis, bananas, they're not getting bombed on every day. They got a computer and a television that feeds them special television for them in their own language, and probably a little bit of grunt English so that they can say that they're being progressive, that they're trying to integrate in society. Particularly in Canada, that's definitely what Trudeau was saying. Trudeau's even gone so far as to say that they're citizens, and of course, that's going to piss people off. But as I said, what he says and what he does are two different things. And personally, I live in Canada, never met a migrant, never met one. And they don't want you to meet migrants because then you'll see them for what they are, that they're fucking idiots and all that. You get plenty of people who work in the bureaucracy who wear like a hijab and things like that, and they'll pretend that they're a civil part of society. But no, they were handpicked from those countries at a young age, and they're not the same people. They're just the representation for the government, so that people look like, oh, they're getting angry at these migrants and look how nice they are and things like that. As a matter of fact, not that I particularly look often, and I wouldn't look at porn anyway if I didn't have to, but there actually are women who try to present themselves as, Muslim women on pornographic websites, and you go, hold on, are they any different than the ones that pretend they're doctors or police officers or whatever? They're not really. The same thing. But, most Canadians, they don't know the difference between what a Libyan looks like or a guy from Morocco or the Algiers or whatever. They don't know. Um, so that's why if you're to, do a little Google search and go, what do people look like in Morocco? Maybe you'll get a search result. And maybe you'll get a fake one. Because they don't want you to know. Why do you think all the translation programs on how to speak another language are so difficult to learn from? It's because they don't want you knowing nothing about another country, especially if you're going to be sympathetic towards them. And, I honestly, like, when I see these things on the television, I have no idea how these people got brainwashed by Islam. Like, I don't understand. Like, in church, and I assume this is where the camaraderie between Islam and Christianity comes into play. If you ignore the hundreds of years where they were at each other's throats, I suspect this is where it comes into play, and they say nice, pleasant things to each other, going, ah, yes, you be good to your neighbor. Ah, yes, you do this, you do that. And it's all nice and pleasant, and that's all good and well, but that's not what the old books used to say, and some people have access to those old books. And, the main point of this video, and I'm reaching the half-hour mark of talking, is that don't think the migrants have got it that great. Nobody's got it that great. And, they shook hands with the devil. So, they gave up their freedom when they came up over here. They don't know it. They don't need to know it. They're there to be studied by a government agency that does not have their best interests in mind. They play by the rules. They be nice. Maybe they can make something of themselves. But a lot of them are going to be naturally inclined to go for the Ottoman Empire and, try and invade France again and then get stopped by a croissant shop. Um, and, this is considering that a lot of screwed up things are happening over there because of this whole fucking situation. And it's just like somebody's got to put the wraps on it. Anyway, that's my opinion of it. Um, Shout out to Paul Joseph Watson if he hears of me and my channel and what I've just said. Anyways, talk to you guys later. Have a good one.